I think I had one day where I lost like 27K.
For one day, I think it was like 35K.
I've lost around 100K in a day. Yeah, that sucked a lot.
I don't know exactly, but over 100,000 in a day.
120-ish in peanuts.
Don't know the exact number. I think I probably lost almost $200,000 in a day.
I mean, my biggest losing day is I probably lost, I don't know, I'd like to say like $300,000, so just a house.
Minus at least 250, but I think more like 300 or 400. It's a lot. I mean, like it's definitely significant, like a small.
300,000, right?
Yeah.
My worst ever was negative 700K. I think it happened really recently.
I don't really know. Probably like maybe like down like 1 million.
Yeah, we were born in Fairfax, Virginia, which is 20 minutes south of DC. So, yeah.
That's where you still live to this day.
Yeah. We've been here in Virginia our whole lives.
My mom stays at home, so she's like pretty much a housewife type. She takes care of like everything in the house. And my dad is a patent examiner. He examines like patents. He was a petroleum engineer or something. I never felt like a younger brother per se, because like growing up I always played with Z and his friends. Even when we played sports, when I was like in 3rd grade, I would play with like, the 4th graders, which back then it was like, I mean, it seemed much bigger back then, obviously. And so like I never really looked at it in the sense, hey, Z's bigger and older than me. I just figured he was just like another person.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close knit because most people, when they turn like 22 or 23, they just move out of the house. But we all still live in the same house that me and Hack kind of bought for my whole family. Me and Hack always pay for a lot of the stuff that, like vacations, and we paid for our house, or at least paid for the biggest part of our house. And then we bought my mom and dad each a car.
One time I went down to visit my family for Christmas. This was back before poker, before we made a lot of money. All my family lives down in Louisiana, like in the same area in Baton Rouge. And what happened was our car broke down like an hour away from Baton Rouge, like the day before Christmas. And then the very next day, my uncle took my parents out to the car dealership and just bought us a car, like a brand new car to drive back to Virginia at the end of the week. And I don't think a lot of families would, just like straight up buy someone a car just because their car broke down. Just stuff like that. Like you can tell. It's like you can tell, like if you needed someone to be there, then you can get it. You can get help from them. You spend all 12 years or all 12 months of the year playing poker with your friends. You never get to see them because everyone lives scattered across the country. This is like one of the only times everyone's in the same place. So you come out here and you get to see everybody.
I have a pretty love-hate relationship with Las Vegas. It's got some good sides and some bad sides. It's got a bit too much of everything, which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Vegas is, land of opportunity.
The city itself is actually retarded in my mind. I mean, it's like the biggest concentration of useless things I've ever seen. There's like nothing useful in Vegas.
Like here in Vegas, like I feel like you're understood if you're a professional poker player. I kind of think of it on the job scales, like jobs are ranked by prestige, like doctors up here, lawyer, teacher, and then like janitor, fast food worker, or whatever. I think in like the Midwest, like poker player is, right about on the same level as working at McDonald's, I think, in a lot of people's minds. And like out in Las Vegas, like poker player is like above rock star, you know, like everyone thinks it's like the coolest thing ever, and like that's something awesome, you know, and you don't have to give like a 20-minute spiel every time you tell people you're a professional poker player. It's understood there's other people out here, you know, it's an accepted profession. You know, basically, at least in my opinion, most of the very talented poker players are all, you know, under the age of like 26. And, you know, is it going to be like that from 20 years from now? Is it just going to always be a kid's game or not? And it's impossible to say, because the reason I feel that most of these kids are so much more successful is because they played a lot more hands due to online poker, and they have all these tools and programs and resources that these old timers, you know, never had and really never bothered to learn how to use.
To beat online poker, you have to be online poker. What that quote's saying is pretty much like you have to breathe, eat and sleep poker. Just pretty much that's all you have to do if you want to be an elite player, like any other job, I guess.
When you're learning a game like poker, or any game, or any skill really, or ability, you just need to be very competitive and have a drive for success.
I mean, no matter what, if people are thinking, you know, way over your head and whatnot, you're never going to beat them. So I think intelligence is by far the most important factor.
Like, it's sort of like a requisite. Like, you can't really become a world-class poker player unless you are intelligent, or you have the type of brain to think, you know, to solve puzzles and think about things, and, you know, like think about logical problems.
I think if you look at, like, the correlation there is extremely high. I think. I mean, people that are playing higher stakes than me are like a lot of them are smarter. People playing lower stakes, like, a lot of them aren't as smart, you know. And there's definitely a lot of correlation there, even up to the highest level.
Everyone I've met, myself included, has a weird sort of perfectionist side to them. They really beat themselves up over mistakes. They have to do everything right.
We're definitely obsessive, you know, obsessive perfectionists. You know, we always want to figure out stuff. I think that, you know, we're always dissecting scenarios, not only in poker, but I think people in poker that are successful are generally pretty analytical by nature.
You need to be able to analyze yourself and be honest with yourself, because you're going to have a lot of leaks as you progress. And if you can't acknowledge that you have those leaks that you need to make certain changes, then you're not going to get anywhere.
It's critical thinking, like the ability to think in a critical way about a hand you played, as opposed, and objective, like being very objective about a hand. So rather than saying like, God damn it, like, that sucks, you know, just being like, okay, well that doesn't suck, it just exists. It is what it is, like, how are we going to deal with that, you know?
You gotta have like some balls. You gotta have some gamble. You can't be afraid to lose money. You have to be able to see that it's like a tool to do your job, kind of like thing.
You know, they might be better than the top players, but they don't want to buy in for $5,000 or $10,000 at a certain game and, you know, take the risks that all the elite players at one time probably took.
You have to be able to deal with gambling, because I know a couple of guys. My brother is one who super intelligent, super logic, and he could have, like, he tried poker and he understood poker pretty much perfectly for his level. But as soon as there was money involved, he started shaking and he just brain farted every single time because he was so scared of gambling. So yeah, you have to be able to deal with gambling. Otherwise, you're never ever gonna.
No matter how good you are or how good you play, there's going to be a time where you just get hammered for a lot of money. And, you know, after that, I think that's what really, you know, shows a poker player. Can you still play well, you know, after you lose half of your bankroll, you know, or are you just going to be, you know, psychologically defeated and never be able to play good poker again?
It's a bit like being Jack Bauer or something, you know, like, stuff keeps going wrong, but it's like, that's okay, because you just have to, like, new situation, analyze how to act in the best possible way, and then eventually, like, that process of always doing the right thing will mean that you're more likely to achieve a desirable outcome.
Basically, everyone in poker thinks they're better than they are. That's like the truth, for sure. Everyone thinks they're better than other people. That it's not it's not always so black and white. Like they're comparable, or other people would say, you know, everyone has their days, whatever. But every poker player thinks that they're just hands down, you know, unquestionably better than a lot of other poker players where they're comparable to.
I mean, a big ego. I mean, you're talking to someone with a huge ego, so I can definitely relate to that.
It's a dangerous one, ego, but like it's important. It's important to control and to have, you know.
Ego is, you know, up in the air whether that's a good or a bad trait.
You have to have a lot of self-confidence to move up through the stakes, to keep challenging yourself to play bigger against tougher opponents or higher stakes where the edges are smaller. I don't know if you have to want to be the best in the world, but you have to want to be among the best in the world anyway to get to that point.
I think if you were going to either have like a lot of ego or not very much ego, you'd probably be better off having a lot of ego as a poker player, simply because that's this, like having ego is what drives you to be better all the time, and you need that kind of fire to start when you're improving as a player. You know, you have to want to, like, for one reason or another, you know, like wanting to crush the other person that you're playing will lead you to like wanting to get better. After you lose a session to someone, you're like, okay, this isn't going to happen, I'm too good for this.
Because when I start to lose, I kind of sense attacked, and I'm kind of scared that I just got pounded by the other guy or whatever, and then I don't know, I just can't accept that because I have too much ego.
When I lose at something, I don't think it matters what it is. I really get mad at myself for letting it happen like that. So then I swear to myself I'm going to work a little harder.
There's no way to scrub and beat me in this game. How did I lose? And then so you figure, you go and try to figure out why, you, like say a game like basketball, you go and try to figure out, you know, how did I lose this game? Like I'm like better than these guys. They're not as athletic. They're not smarter than me. So how did I lose? And you go and you try to figure it out. And the same thing with poker. Like you play against a monkey or something, and he ends up taking all your money. You're like, how did I lose? How can I exploit him better? You ask yourself these questions and you try to make yourself better.
I think they once asked like the general public how attractive they thought they were on a scale of 1 to 10. I think the average person said like 7.5, which is obviously not true because the average person should say 5. I would even be willing to bet, like, if you only asked poker players that were losing poker players, I bet you over 50% of them would say that they're good or winning or that they're better than average. And these are losing poker players' lifetime.
If you want to be the best, right, then you have to beat the best, obviously. But if you're playing someone that is considered the best, they're probably not going to be doing a good job of handing you their money. So you might even get hurt playing it, losing more money out of your bankroll than you're even capable of handling.
And then you're going to be too arrogant to, like, you know, you'll just keep playing them. You'll be like, oh no, he couldn't beat me down. I'm the best. I'm the best. Why? I'm just going to study and try to get better than him. And next thing you know, he's like taking all your money. So
You know, you have luck involved, and it's a skill game. It's two things that mix together that make people live in denial.
You have to have the ability to identify when you're out of your league.
That's pretty delicate balance. You're saying I have to be the best in the world, but I can't play with certain people who are the best in the world, right? Like
it's a thin line for sure.
Yeah. So it's a tightrope, but it brings out some interesting personalities, you know, in poker for sure.
Why is there this big like ego dick waving contest? I don't know. I mean, I think it's like that in a lot of, you know, professions and fields. And I think especially online when you're not really thinking about, you know, as your opponents as really humans, you're just thinking about them as, you know, names on the screen or whatever. People behave, you know, way worse.
But they'll battle it out for hundreds and thousands of dollars just for the purpose of showing of proving their point, you know, and thinking that they're the best. You know? Maybe they just watch Braveheart too many times.
It's actually a pretty diverse group of people who end up as professional poker players. I guess we mostly have in common a sort of bit of a disdain for authority, definitely not liking to have a boss or have to show up at work at the same time every day, do the same thing every day.
You have no requirement to do anything. And so it's much harder to discipline yourself to do things that you don't want to do, like balance your checkbook or something. I don't know. Like, I can't even think of an example.
What day is it today? Like Monday or... Like, I don't even know what day of the week it is. And I'm like chilling. I'm in Vegas, like in a penthouse, just sitting here. So, you know, like the freedom's definitely the best part.
Everyone turns lazy because you kind of never do stuff, and then you get used to never do anything, and then you don't want to do anything after that, and then you sleep like 14 hours a day.
And this, ironically, like the better you are at poker, the better you get, the more money you make, the more lazy you become. You think you would be more prone to work harder, and I find it's the opposite because it takes more discipline to work harder because you're allowed to be lazy.
It spoiled me a lot where I just kind of was allowed to get away with a lot of things, and I don't know, you like travel a lot, you just get used to having room service, different things, I basically suck at life. I can't do things. I'm just good at playing poker.
And some of the stuff as you do as a poker player, like going out, spending thousands of dollars drinking and gambling, it's probably not the most mature thing to do with your money.
Kind of just about making a lot of money, and spending it, kind of like a rapper, except you're an online poker nerd.
You see poker players hang out and they're constantly just inventing games and trying to beat each other at anything.
We were betting on which wave would be the biggest, why, watching the ocean and stuff like that.
Anything involving skills, like we have something in our hand and there's a can. I mean, there's 100% that we're gonna find bets. We're gonna find HUDs for that, and we're gonna bet on it. Like anything we see, we have to bet on it.
Betting over-unders on how many minutes until the food comes out at the restaurant and just ridiculous things like that.
Because you've been at this restaurant before. You have an egg.
I know. It's actually, there's no way it's going to be more than 11 minutes.
Credit card roulette is the game of choice for paying for dinner for us poker players. And the way it works is we all put our credit cards into a bunch, and then we give it to a waiter.
The waiter or waitress will sort of eliminate them one by one. It's more exciting until there's one left, and then they end up getting stuck with the bill. We invented this game where you would hide something in one of your hands when it was down to two people, and the other person would have to pick which hand it was in. And there was little bar peanuts at this one place. He hides the peanut in one of his hands, and I picked the wrong hand, and he's so excited. He goes, "You should have sniffed the peanut, buddy." So we call that game "Sniffing the Peanut" from now on. I'm terrible at that game also.
So yeah, we call it the poker boom, and it started in probably around 2003 when Chris Moneymaker won the World Series and put up $40 and took down the main event, for which was over $2 million. And he was just an average Joe accountant from wherever he was from, and the perfect last name, Moneymaker. And then you combine in the World Poker Tour, which has been around for years now and was also starting up at that time. And that really became popular on TV with Mike Sexton, Vince Van Patten, and their whole production was just phenomenal. And it kind of gave people a look at poker that we never really seen before. You were seeing whole cards, which wasn't completely new, but it was in a way no one had ever done before. And then thirdly, it was really the start of online poker too. People started realizing, especially when Chris Moneymaker won, that maybe this online poker thing is cool. Maybe it is legit. Can I really get in the main event a $10,000 buy-in for $40? Yeah, I can, and I can win it. So all these things together just started this huge boom, this huge popularity in poker that got it to where it is today.
A bunch of kids making a lot of money from gambling has probably never happened in the history of gambling until online poker started, which was around 2003 or whatnot. And there was kind of, a bunch of people who got a lot of money really fast and excelled. And the reason why is basically online poker was exploding. There was, hundreds of thousands or millions of people playing, and no one knew how to play these games.
If you're friends with a poker player that played back in those days, the golden ages of online poker, you've definitely got that rehashed about 1 million times about how good the games were. You should have played on Party Poker, and oh my god, it was so easy. And
I think, honestly, that in the history of mankind, that might have been the easiest time to ever make money playing a game.
There was a lot of money coming in back then, basically. It was like money fell from the sky.
There was a ton of bad players. Like, you don't really see that nowadays, where there's just people like you can just bet any amount and they're going to call you the top pair no matter what. And that's pretty much how it was for like 2 years.
The losing players would be just atrocious. I mean, they really ran the spectrum in terms of the mistakes they were making. Some were way too loose, some were way too tight, some would, just bluff and bluff and bluff in completely hopeless spots. Others would put in lots of money on the early streets and then fold the later streets consistently. But it was, hard to go a couple days losing in those games.
You can't print the money out anymore. Like, it used to just come out of the computer.
Well, it was like Christmas every day. I mean, people were just throwing around money like crazy, and the games were so soft. I really regret not putting in more hours.
But I remember playing, and my strategy was, if there was like one good player at the table, I would leave that game and go to a new table. And nowadays, like online poker is, every table has 5 like excellent players, and then 1 recreational player who is not a professional. And back in the day, the ratio was 5-1. And now it's 1-5.
I have this map on my wall where it's like a big map like this, and it has like pins of all the cities I've been in the world. So anyway, we're looking through the map, and I'm like, God, like all of the east coast of the world, like Asia and Eastern Europe, is completely like, void. And I'm like, gosh, I'd really like to go there. And Nick's like, well, I want to go. And I was like, okay, well, let's just play poker for a week, and we'll make like 15, 20K, and then we'll go. We booked flights before we even played poker because it was like so trivial that we were going to win money. I talked to a lot of people that are older, and they said, it's too good to be true. I was just too young to know that it wasn't going to last forever. I guess tilt can be defined as experiencing something in poker. Obviously, unfortunate.
When you're emotionally upset from losing at gambling, which is, I feel like any gambler is familiar with.
You're not even doing stuff logically anymore. You're acting on emotion. And when you're doing that, it's just terrible because all your decisions aren't logical. You're not using reason like you should be. And pretty much it's going to cause you to lose so much more money.
You can even see it in other sports. Like, if you watch tennis, like people will miss a ball and then they'll get upset. And like when they get upset, that would be like the poker equivalent of tilting.
Anybody that doesn't get tilted is not human. I mean, or in denial, one or the other.
When I tilt, I just start playing like irregularly. Like, I'll start playing a lot more hands and start playing them in a much worse fashion, like trying to gamble a lot more to get even.
I have done things like broke laptops, broke at least 5 or 6 wireless mouses, just punched holes in my wall.
The craziest thing I've ever done was I lost like a $100,000 pot at my parents' house when I still lived there, and just picked up my laptop and tried to chuck it through the sliding door, but luckily it didn't break, so that was about the craziest thing I've done.
You tried to throw it through a door.
Yeah, like a glass door.
And it hit the door and fell.
It just bounced off, and I was kind of happy about it.
I went to my garage. I was super tilted. I had just left the tables there. I got up and I took the time to go to my garage, and then I was like, I gotta break something, and I see the wall, so I'm like, I don't want to punch in a stud in the wall, so I give it a big kick first, and there's like a big hole in the wall. I'm like, alright, there's no stud right there, so I hit like a foot above that, but there were horizontal studs, so I just crushed my hand there. My hand just exploded, and I had to go to the hospital that night.
One of the main reasons people tilt or they get annoyed in life after having a losing session is there's this huge period of self-doubt where they're like, okay, well, if I just lost money this session, maybe I'm not even a winning poker player. These things that start to go through your mind, and you're like, okay, well, if I'm not a winning poker player, that means I'm going to run out of money fairly soon, and then I'm going to have to get a JOB, which is basically like the worst possible result.
3-letter word, JOB. That's not what you want. I'd have to make a resume and stuff. That would be terrible.
A lot of really talented poker players, that's going to be their downfall. Not necessarily tilt, it's just like emotional control in general and discipline. It could help so many other players. And I mean, sometimes if you can't control it, I mean, it might seem a bit cowardly, but the best thing to do is just to stop and start blank.
But the thing is, I lose my mind over stupid stuff like a video game or like
basketball game. But like with poker and stuff like that, like I've always learned that it was so important just to keep a straight mind, that there's no way you can be successful at this game, especially at the higher stakes, if you can't control your emotions. So with poker, I rarely ever like go on some type of emotional tilt, because if I do, I'll just quit, because I know that I can just come back the next day and I'll play better. Z was always a year older than me in school, so like a lot of the things he did, I did as well. And so, like honestly, if you look through our hobbies list, you know, like there are a lot of the same things.
All I did in like 7th, 8th grade was math team stuff, you know, SAT, prep stuff just for fun. That was like my hobby back then.
SAT prepping for fun.
Yeah, I'll see what the highest score I can get in SATs is.
Did you ever hit a perfect score?
No, I suck in verbal. But yeah, I've hit a perfect in math, obviously.
And I remember like when we were a lot younger, we were like 5 or 6, my dad taught us how to play chess. And then Z taught me how to play chess. And then my dad would go to work, me and Z, 5 or 6 years old, during the summer, and we'd have nothing to do. So we'd sit there and play each other at chess against each other like all day. And then pretty much like we did that for all summer. Then at the end of summer, when my dad came home, little 6-year-old Z was finally able to beat my dad just from, you know, getting better by playing me and him playing against each other. You know, like we're just competitive like that, and like Z always tries to butt off more than you can chew, because when you're 6-year-old, you're not supposed to really even think that you can beat your dad at chess. You know.
I got pushed down a lot by bullies when I was little, but like my parents were always they made sure we knew that if we ever got in a fight and got in trouble, then we'd get punished a lot. And then I was really afraid of that. So when they fought, I'd really be afraid of fighting. Not because I'm afraid they'll beat me up, but I'm afraid of getting in trouble. Because you know how it is. It doesn't matter what the story is. If 2 kids get in a fight, no matter if one kid runs across and punches the other kid in the face first for no reason, both of them will get in trouble. So that's why I never fought back. And then bullies pick on kids that don't fight back, obviously. Because they're like, they have like low self-esteem, and they know they pick on someone that fights back, they might lose. So I got picked on a lot as a little kid.
You know, I don't mind being classified as an Asian nerd. You know, I like it. I like playing video games. I play sports too and stuff like that. Most of the time when I play sports, like even against like white people or black people, they underestimate you because you're Asian.
That's true.
But it helps you out.
You think that the underestimation helps?
I think for the most part, I'm better than most people I play against.
I think I don't know, don't tell them this, but I think I'm just a little more powerful than them. But yeah, but still, I don't want to mess with him though, because he might do some damage to me when we fought.
We haven't fought since like high school, I don't think. But I've been taking jiu-jitsu classes, so I can probably take them now.
If he likes something, I'll like it and compete with him at it too. Not like always directly, but like indirectly kind of.
When we were younger, we played one-on-one football, which was like really stupid. I remember like we used to go in the yard and like it would just be like one-on-one football. Like we'll have set downs and then Z would just try to tackle me. Or like when he had the ball, try to tackle him and we just made it all the way down the field.
What else? Basketball, football, I guess poker is the latest one.
I think in the very beginning, I remember I won the most money at $25 buy-in. And I remember one Christmas, Z didn't have that much money because he didn't play $25 buy-in the same way I did. And I had like $4,000 in my bankroll. And then, you know, it was the first Christmas where we actually had, I think it was like my first year of college or something. It was the first Christmas where we actually had like, you know, a good amount of like extra cash that we could buy like, you know, real presents with for my family and stuff. And then, but the thing is, since Z didn't have any money, obviously me and Z, like, you know, I was like, all right, let's just buy presents and then we'll just write both their names out. And then so, you know, at that point, Z wanted to improve his game. And then so Z started improving his game to, you know, try to learn, you know, how I was beating the $25 buy-in game. And then he took it to the $50 buy-in. And then like we pretty much like escalated up and forth, back and forth until we got up to the top. I guess we're competitive on how much money we can win, but at the end of the day, it's still us playing and helping each other out, and then competing with other people. Like if Z won like, I don't know, 100,000, then I would have to win 100,000. So there's competition there on how much money you can win, but there's not really competition directly. Like, you know, like I want to try to beat you heads up, or you want to try to beat me.
what you spend a lot of time doing and whatnot, it's going to change you and it's going to affect you. I think one of the main things is being a professional poker player does for you, especially online, is you learn to almost suppress your emotions, which is because it's like I said earlier, it's hard to deal with the ups and downs of winning and losing and the highs and lows you feel. So you kind of become almost numb to it in some ways.
When you kind of get used to losing, I don't know, 10, 20K in a day, then kind of not much matter after it.
It would definitely desensitize you to money in a sense, but I think that might actually be a good thing because, like, I mean, you're not supposed to hinge your happiness on money anyways.
I feel numb when I play poker because, I mean, regardless of the fluctuations, obviously I'll be happy, but it won't last long. I'll be sad, but it won't last long.
Well, obviously losing money sucks, but I mean, it's happened. I guess it's just happened so many times that you learn to cope with it. I mean, I'm sure if I had 90 people in my life die, the 91st, like, yeah, it would suck, but eventually I'd be like, well, I've dealt with a lot of people dying before. So it's like just the familiarity with things makes it much easier to cope with. And even though it's very extreme, people, like, I think most people in their life will never lose $100,000. It's happened enough to where you're just like, well, the sun will rise tomorrow.
It really makes you, think about time and, ups and downs in life, that it's going to be all the time,
Like, in some ways, you just don't care about money anymore. You can't, or else you're gonna, not be able to psychologically make it.
Like, it's bad for you to have a good, like, a real value for a dollar. If you understand the value of a dollar well, you are probably not going to be as successful of a gambler.
Anything under a certain kind of amount of money, the price of it starts to become interesting only as a concept.
In my mind right now, anything under $1,000 is totally free. Like, I don't care. Like, $800, it's nothing to me. I don't want it to sound like pretty douchebag or anything. It just, in my mind, it's just nothing. I just don't care.
Just playing a game like poker would make you be able to calculate risks better, so to know what you should be investing in and stuff like that. And a lot of people are scared to take a shot. Obviously anyone that's playing poker for a living understands that you have to take a shot if you want to succeed in certain things, and I think that applies for life as well.
You think of things always in terms of percentage. Like, I notice a lot of my friends from back home or people or girls we meet are always like, gosh, you think so weird. They're like, how do you think of everything in terms of percent? Like, if someone's like, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, well, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but there's like a 70% chance I'm going to be at excess. There's a 20% chance I'm going to go to sleep. And then there's a 10% chance I'm going to do this. And it's like, well, why do you think of it like that? I'm like, well, how else are you supposed to think of it?
Like, it's weird to me because some people get so upset over money things, and I can't even relate anymore. If someone loses a digital camera, and they're upset and it ruins their day for 8 hours.
I see my non-poker playing friends getting really, really upset when, say, their TV breaks or something like that. And it's not that the money is actually a significant amount relative to their income and their financial situation, but they just can't believe their bad luck to suddenly have several $100s snatched away from them. And as a poker player, you're used to getting unlucky for large amounts of money on a regular basis. So when something happens, like your TV stops working, it's just another bad beat. Oh well.
If I woke up and I was like, well, I had cancer, I'd be upset but I would realize that, there's a certain chance that it's going to happen. And so given that I'm born and accept these chances, when it does, you can't be that upset.
I mean, I hate pitying myself, so I never do it. And other people, I don't think they realize that, you know what I mean? A lot of times, even if you lose $1 million, there's still something good about that. I mean, I'm 24, I'm 23. I lost $1 million, and I haven't killed myself yet. So obviously, I must be doing something right. I have so much money that I can afford to play a game and lose $1 million and still have more money than all my peers. Obviously I'm still doing something right. There's worse things that happen in the world. There's people in other countries that can't even afford to eat, and you're worried about a number in your bank account. It's crazy.
The average online poker player tends to be a little nerdy, you know, because they sit behind the computer all the time.
The online poker sort of, like I said, caters to the competitive nerd.
You kind of imagine every poker player being kind of some weird geek in front of his computer.
You know, they might be a little bit shy to talk to girls. And if you go to a poker party, it will be impossible to find somebody to dance with. Nobody dances at a poker party. And each time they'll bring a DJ and they'll have a dance floor. But it's completely empty.
I think that it attracts a lot of introverted people maybe just because to be successful at it requires a lot of dedication towards it.
Introverts are generally more observant. I think that's one thing that everyone would agree on.
Like, you have to notice a lot of things at the table that other people wouldn't notice. And if you're doing all the talking, a lot of times you don't notice that type of stuff. So, like, you know, a lot of stuff that goes on, like, in your head that you don't really tell someone else, that comes into play a lot at the table.
And then all these little details add up, and then they matter a lot.
You can always ask guys to dance.
And they'll always awkwardly say no.
I've heard a quote that says, you know, at the poker table you see people as they truly are. And then I heard another quote that is, at a poker table you don't see people as they truly are, but you see them at their worst.
Gambling, especially with the anonymity or the supposed anonymity of the internet, brings out the worst in people, I think, sometimes.
It's weird. Online, all you see is an avatar. And you can anyone can type whatever the hell they want to a chat box. It doesn't matter. You can say whatever the hell you want. So you don't see a
It all
face.
boils down to, you know, a lot of the guys got into it when they were kids, and you know, like it's a bit of a nerd game in the sense that a lot of poker players would play poker, and you know they were nerds and they get bullied at school, so they get online and berate people and you know, insult them. And
People they'll get real mad at you. Like gambling, I mean, live poker also, but yeah, you know, playing heads up against people, you could, you know, you win a hand, you get lucky in a hand, and people will tell you they want your family to get AIDS. And
Like, I'd just talk about how bad he is, and then he'd talk about, like, when he sees me in real life, he's gonna fuck me up the ass with a dildo.
Like, I'm gonna find you in Vegas, I'm gonna mug you, and like, you know, I'm gonna like find where you live.
sometimes, you know, meeting someone when I called his sister a whore might be a bit awkward.
You know, they fucking hate you, and you know, say a bunch of racist stuff. You know, they don't even know what race I am or something. You know, it's like
He was like really vicious. He was like, man, I will kill you. I'll have you murdered and stuff like that. And like, yada yada yada. I don't remember. I don't have the chat anymore. I wish I saved it because it was epic. I mean, I never posted it anywhere because, you know, obviously I was like, whatever. Like, he's just talking shit. I don't care. I just took all his money. And like, he was like, I'm gonna have you murdered. And like, I was like, well, I don't know how you're gonna have me murdered unless you do it yourself, because you don't have any money to hire anyone anymore.
The online persona, I mean, everybody would like to think that it sort of correlates with how you are in real life, but in most cases, you'll get blindsided so many times.
You make an idea of them, like, before meeting them, you just have this picture in your mind of, okay, this guy's gonna be like that, and a lot of them are just not like that.
And you always try to figure it out in your head. Like, you'll meet a few people and you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong about this and this. But, I mean, I stopped trying to figure it out. I just assumed that it's two different personalities. And
this might be a little unfair, but I think the more like younger online poker generation, like the people that are maybe 2 or 3 years younger than me that are just starting, I've met them in a lot of different situations or been introduced, and they definitely seem a lot more introverted than I remember all of my friends being.
You know, these young kids, they're 19, 20, and I can call them young kids because I'm 22 and incredibly old. I'm pretty much old school in the online poker generation, which is absolutely retarded.
Oh man, these kids these days. These kids. I'm so old now. I'm 24 years old and I'm old. It's insane the drive that some of these kids still have. And I remember when I was that age, when I was, you know, 20 years old, 21 years old, having that drive. And now it's just like, whatever, like.
Describe what goes through your mind when you think about a Scandinavian no-limit hold'em cash game player.
Monkey. That's pretty much it. They're it's like big.
Those guys are like monkeys, man. They're like really crazy. compared to American players, I think.
They're generally perceived to be very loose, very aggressive. Even
You know,
reckless.
has no bankroll management. We're just playing whatever game he can afford to play in. You know, and
I feel like they bluff a lot more.
Very. I think the key word would be unpredictable.
I don't know. I think it's more likely that when you're playing someone who seems like they might be drunk and they're Swedish, it's more likely that they are drunk than if it was, an American player or something. They definitely like to party and play high stakes poker.
I don't think you're gonna find the craziest parties in Sweden. If you look at other, maybe if you go to the southern part of Europe, you'll find crazier people. So it's really weird that once people start playing games, they will go completely crazy. It's really odd actually, because ask somebody about Swedish people in general, and they will tell you that they are mostly very boring and maybe like they turn towards themselves, like kind of inward people. They don't really open up towards other people. So it's like the opposite of real life. It's really weird.
A lot of us young players that became good early, that when we started, the good players that was already there, they started playing poker like kind of a little bit before the poker boom started. So we had some guys, like 4 or 5 guys that was already like established and that we could look up to for a bit. And they were like 25 to 30 years old. And and they were kind of normal Swedish people, laid back, like weren't flaunting their money and stuff, but they were still good type players, they knew how to play. So we kind of started out with them.
If poker starts as a seed and then grows into a tree of players, right? And all these players know each other, like we were just talking about how strong like these poker cliques and communities have become. Like naturally the lower stakes players idolize the higher stakes players, and the higher stakes players just happen to be people like kind of crazy. Maybe you could track it all back to Gus Hansen or something, like he started off playing crazy before playing crazy was cool, and then maybe all the Euros, the next generation kind of imitated him, and then they imitated their idols, and next thing you know, the whole of Scandinavia was, playing that kind of crazy style.
A lot of Swedish or European people in general, they like to look down on Americans because you're so much better than anybody else or whatever. I guess people like to think of you that way. But when it comes to poker, I mean, just everybody loves an American at the table, I guess. Most people seem to think that you're a really bad poker player, so.
People that were brought up in the poker world in the U.S., like on 2+2, like they learn how to play a more tight, aggressive style. But I guess in Scandinavia, it's like a different poker school almost. But I mean, both styles can be successful.
I think that maybe the Scandinavians get a bit of a bad rap among the American players. I think that a lot of the best players in the world are Scandinavian.
This thing about, Scandinavian players, that they seem to be crazy, that seems to be a lot of players when they make, decisions against Scandinavians, they seem to factor in that craziness factor, I think.
The old days where you just, you got 4-bet shoved on, he's from Sweden, click call, one of those, it was so much simpler back then.
Actually, the Norwegians are worse. You think the Norwegians are worse?
Norwegians are worse, yeah.
By far the worst. Really?
They're really sick. But I think they probably drink too much alcohol and are, I don't know, just sick.
As poker's gotten more popular over the years, I think more and more people have come around to the idea that you can make money in it long term, even if they don't understand it at all.
When I first started off, there was a lot of questions amongst my peers and my family about the game.
Just the standard ones, is it safe? Do you trust them with your money? How do you know it's
how does that work? Or so you make some money off that or whatever?
Do you win enough to live on that? How much did you win? Could you lose everything? Etc. All these questions.
The funny one is always, yeah, you won $10,000, but how much did you lose?
You won a lot of money, but how much have you lost?
How much do you lose? Is the popular one.
Most of the time when they ask that, I just explain to them. Obviously, it already includes my losses. I mean, I'm thinking this idiot should already know this, but I eventually explain to them that, yeah, when I say how much I made, it's counting my losses already. That should seem obvious to everyone, right?
Are you good? Which I always find entertaining because I'd obviously choose it as my profession if I was just a subpar losing player.
I mean, my trick is to change the conversation as soon as possible because I don't want to be talking poker to a girl for 2 hours straight.
If when I travel often, I present myself as a student or whatever, because I just don't want to deal with that kind of shit.
And I'll try to move the conversation to another area simply because it's so mind-numbing to talk about poker to someone who has really no idea about poker. And
I don't want to get into an argument with a random person for like 20 minutes about why poker's skill. If someone's like a good friend of mine, I'll tell them, I'll explain it to them more, but I mean, you run into a lot of people and they ask you what your profession is and you tell them poker and they just go on and on about it.
I heard online poker's rigged, and then I try to tell them obviously it's not rigged. Or they'll tell me about this one hand that they had where they had pocket sevens and then the flop was like 7-7-3 or something, and then some guy had aces and then turn came ace and then they lost like a $125 pot with quads over quads, so it's super rigged.
And you're like, well, okay, whatever you want, buddy.
I used to get really riled up at the beginning because I always felt like I had to defend my point. But like I said, I used to let a lot of people dictate my well-being, and now I'm pretty happy just letting them in their just leaving them in their zone of non-comprehension.
If they have some prejudice against it going in, they're not going to listen to what you have to say. They're going to assume that the stuff you're saying that they can't understand or don't understand is just the rationalizations of a compulsive gambler.
You know, I can understand people who don't understand it because, you know, why would you understand it? You know, I wouldn't have understand it if I were studying, you know, engineering, whatever. But see, there's a lot of things I don't understand, but I don't, you know, I won't give these people advice about their lives.
I also like the guys that try to give me some advice on how to play poker. Yeah, they're like, stuff like that. They're like, you know what's the best way to play ace king is to not raise it because you have to wait until you hit a pair. Because right now you still have ace high or stuff like that. And then I'm laughing a little on the inside. And then obviously I'm not going to try to correct them. I'll just like agree with them.
And it's funny because sometimes I take their advice to heart. And then I get back to my room or whatever, and I think like, yeah, maybe I should do that. And then I wake up the morning after and like, what the fuck am I thinking?
I try not to tell people how much money I make. Sometimes people directly ask me, and I think usually I just say, well, I have enough to not have to get a job, you know, which is an honest answer.
It's just people ask you how much money you make, but it would never ever ask, you know, somebody, a dentist or, you know, a lawyer, whatever, how much money they make. But just when it comes to poker, people seem to, you know, like they need to know, or like it makes a difference anyway. I mean, it's just a game, right?
Well, my parents are both lawyers, you know, both very smart, very successful people, and they had a similar professional aspiration for me, of course.
I don't know, I think he just wanted me to make like a good stable income, like something like traditional, like be like an accountant or a lawyer or something along those lines.
Doctor, you know, if you're a doctor in an Asian family, then they always brag to their other Asian parents about you, so they've always talked about that. Or at least an engineer, at least they said.
I was going to be a stockbroker, but I dropped out.
I dropped out of university to play poker eventually, and both my parents work in the education system, so that was like a small hiccup.
Well, one summer, my dad kind of said we couldn't play poker anymore because he thought I was gambling, and we wasted, you know, so much time playing.
And they said, you know, you guys are at school to study and learn, to graduate, to become an engineer. Why are you playing poker? You shouldn't be playing poker. But obviously, we didn't listen to them. We're like, okay, yeah, sure, we're not going to play poker, whatever. And we obviously played anyways. But during the summers, it was really hard because my dad wouldn't let us play poker at home.
And so he said, if you ever play poker again, you can't do it inside my house. So then me and Hack went to this PC cafe, and then we kept playing the sit and goes. And then we made like, it wasn't that much, but it was like, you know, $10 to $12 an hour, playing 4 of them at the same time.
So now he's playing like, you know, 3 or 4 tables at $25.50, and also paying like a $4 rate or $3 rate per hour extra.
Which is ridiculous.
I mean, it's a lot of those stakes, obviously. I mean, but we didn't know at the time, and the thing is, people were so bad, we were still winning. And then so, you know, in the beginning, it was pretty hard to convince my parents.
My parents are divorced, and I lived with my dad in high school, and I didn't tell my dad because I'd like hinted at him that I was thinking about it. Like, I just knew he wouldn't accept it. You know, and I basically told him, you know, like, Dad, I might do this, like, you know, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, you know, like, if I, like, do this for a year and I fail, you know, like, I'm only going to be spending my own money, I'll have all these experiences, and, you know, it'll make me a stronger person, and I'll go back to school.
You know, look, I made all this money. and all my friends are making all this money, and like maybe I should try and like I'm like, you know, maybe this will only last for 2 or 3 years.
And I remember the day, he found out, like, I was living in the dorm, and actually one of my friends was coming over, and we were going to drive 3 hours to the casino in Canada to play poker. And, like, he came there, and, like, he came in the door, and he was, like, crying. I'm like, and it's the only time I've seen my dad cry, and, like, I had to, like, he's like, what are you doing with your life, blah, blah, blah. We had to go to talk to, like, the guidance counselor or whatever because they were kicking me out of the dorms, and my dad was like, explain to her what you're doing. And, like, I remember she was like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. Like, don't let him go to school at Central, which is where the Indian casino's at. And which I thought was really funny because, like, the biggest game there is, like, you know, it was, like, tiny compared to the amount of money I'd already made playing poker.
Because, you know, coming from an Asian background, I guarantee you every Asian person or every Asian family has a family friend or an uncle or knows a story of someone who lost all their house and wife and kids by gambling away. So obviously, a few of the uncles were like, you know, it's probably a bad idea, but, you know, I want you to learn for yourself. And some of the uncles were like, you know what, you're stupid if you do that. You're just completely stupid. And the thing with Z is, Z loves proving people wrong. That's like what he lives for. If you tell Z he can't do something, he'll try 10 times harder to do it just to spite you. And even if you tell him he can't do it because you're trying to help him, he'll just do it just to show you that he can, no matter what it is. I guarantee, like he'll. And the thing is, it's really weird because like most of the times when he says, when you tell him he can't do it, like you would think he can't do it 100% of the time. You know, and a lot of times he'll try and he'll still fail. But like 25% of the time when he does succeed, like it still surprises you because like you think he fails at everything you say he can't do, and he'll just like do it, and he'll be able to. I don't know how he does it.
As we improved, I kept telling him, and he kept saying, you know, it's luck or you guys are just lucky so far. I mean, he doesn't understand like the rules. He didn't understand the rules when he said that. But after he did a little more research, you know, when we're making like 14, 15K a day sometimes, he was pretty impressed. And then he actually, I think that's when he started believing it.
They've definitely come around now. And I think they have a little bit of an understanding about poker now. Not fully, but they have a better idea about everything.
When I got the first check from Ultimate Bet, they, you know, were a little bit surprised that I was really getting paid by this site I was playing on. They kind of, they were, I wouldn't say they were skeptical, but they were withholding judgment that it was all for real until I actually got that check.
And then, I mean, you just bring the check up and show it to them. It's not, you can't really deny it.
No, they don't ask me if I'm broke anymore. I think they, you know, understand that I'm not going to be going broke.
And it was, you know, more than I could ever in my wildest dreams imagine. And I never did go back. And, you know, there's always time for that, right? But the golden age was only there for a few years. So I'm glad that I did do that. I was pretty happy about it, and I'm still happy about it.
So I decided that I would sort of let it ride, so to speak, and you know, see how long it could last for.
On my dad's 50th birthday, we bought him an M5 BMW, and I think that's probably when he was like, all right, well, what can I say, you know? I mean, I think that's a good, I think at that point, like, it was clear cut that he was okay with it. Before then, he was still kind of trying to ease into it. So.
What about the rest of your family? Have they has a new spread of your success?
You mean like my relatives or?
Now, let's say the uncles who said that, you know, you're stupid.
I mean, like, they obviously, since they're old Asian people, they're never going to admit that they're wrong, you know.
The only way you can get good at poker is really to play hundreds of, like even thousands of hours of poker. And that's like, you know, and not only do you have to play, but you have to be also thinking about, you know, what you're doing wrong and how to get better during those hours. And like anyone who spends, you know, hundreds or thousands of hours doing something, that's a lot of time to put in. And, you know, in order to do that, you kind of have to have like this addiction to it almost.
Well, I don't know anyone that's been addicted to poker. I would not say they've been addicted. I think it's like a job. If you play like 8 hours a day, it's just like a job, right?
It's hard to know because poker for me progressed so quick and took such a big part of my life that
it's hard to look back and say, I might have been like addicted back then.
Like video games are addictive, gambling's addictive. Online poker is a combination of the two of them. It's very, very addictive.
I speak for myself. When I was starting to play, I was only thinking about that, and I was trying to like get my hands on the computer and play as soon as I could. When you start loving the game and stuff, yes, it is addictive, and yes, it is gambling. It's not like blackjack or roulette gambling, but it's still gambling and it's still addictive.
But at the same time, it is what has made me so successful at what I do. I don't think if I wasn't so-called addicted or compulsive about playing poker, I would have never, got as good as I am and achieved the monetary success I've achieved from poker.
The thing is, I think that being addicted to playing poker is a lot different than being addicted to gambling. You can just play poker and be a gambling addict, and it's going to end badly for you probably, and you should get help for that addiction. But there's a difference. I mean, you can be addicted to poker, but that's that's a lot more similar to being addicted to like I don't know, like Scrabble or something. In almost every case I've seen where you could make a case that someone needed to like seek help for an actual addiction, they weren't just playing poker and losing money. That never happened. They were always like probably addicted to drinking or drugs or both, and also would play like tons of blackjack and craps and slots, and they'd bet on tons of sports, and they're betting on lots of things. They're addicted to the full range of full gambit of gambling activities.
Craps, blackjack, Texas Hold'em bonus, baccarat, Pygow. pretty much all of the above. I love them all.
And the thing is, like a lot of people are, like they think like, oh, professional gamblers, they have more self-control than, the recreational players or whatnot. And I don't think that's true. I think most, especially at the high stakes, I think most high stakes players have a lot in common with problem gamblers. And, the one thing that separates them is just their intelligence and their ability to focus on things that, matter.
It's hard to look back and say, well, if I was a losing poker player, would I play it? And that's something I can't fathom because I'm awesome at poker.
Around the summer of 2006, there started to be some rumors around the internet that we could be in for legislative change with regard to poker, that it could be very bad for American poker players.
And like I remember, like it was like a blue mood. We were like, holy shit! Like, what are we gonna do with our lives? Like, poker is over. It's gonna be illegal. We're gonna have to go back to school. We're gonna have to get real jobs. Like, this was like a fun year or whatever, but like it's over.
I just remember like this image of like us all out partying, drinking, and being like, it's sort of like a cheers to like last hurrah. Like we're gonna have to find new jobs, and everyone said it, and I was like, thought it was more of a facetious thing than anything.
I remember hearing this song on the radio one morning when I was waking up. It was I remember some lyrics. I think the title was called "The Dream Is Over." Do you know the song? Basically, it's like, I remember the main lyric was like, "The dream is over." So I was thinking, damn man, we almost had this.
I mean, I think everyone was pretty scared because we were all counting on online poker being around for a while. I know I had a lot of money on party poker, and I was getting pretty scared, like, oh, are they just going to take all my money, or what's going to happen? So I cashed out all my money.
How am I going to get my money? And I just went on this huge panic and cashed out everything, as many did.
The months before, the law was actually put in place, there's lots of, things in the media, but, banning online poker, in the land of the free, I mean, nobody believes that, right?
I guess it was around August or September of 06, that the UIGEA was finally passed. That's the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act, which at first appeared like it was going to be an absolute disaster.
You know, like you don't get affected very suddenly when something like that occurs. You don't, since you have no frame of reference for this sort of legislation going through for your job. You know, it's all new ground, so you don't really immediately know how that will affect the games.
Even the next, 4 or 6 months, it didn't really affect me. But then after that, like after the people that had money online couldn't really deposit more, noticed it getting much more difficult, and then from there it was sort of downhill.
Obviously Americans are still playing online poker. It didn't quite do what they wanted it to do. But from a poker player's perspective, if you want to get into poker now in the United States, it's incredibly difficult to get money on a site, and you have to really jump through a lot of hoops to do it. And a lot of these recreational players, they just want to throw a credit card on and just, make it easy. And it's not easy anymore.
I don't know. I didn't notice the sudden drop fish right away. I thought I would, but yeah, it gradually got harder and harder.
Suddenly, sites that used to be really good start to look a bit more like ghost towns,
Fish were under the impression that poker had become illegal in the United States. The amateur players had mostly been playing on party poker, and when party poker closed, they thought, this is it, online poker's over, and didn't really look into the alternatives.
But I remember, initially it was sort of probably, the feeling that maybe some of the Wall Street companies got when they found out, the Ponzi schemes were all getting caught. It was well, they're not going to take my private jet away. It was oh, it's not really happening type of thing, I just, didn't really think that I was going to be affected by it, or maybe the Enron people, it was one way for so long, you didn't know any different, and it was people said it was going to get harder, but I was it's not going to happen. Poker's so easy, no one's good. And then, unfortunately, found out it was true.
So the games on the sites that were still serving Americans, PokerStars and Full Tilt and so forth, were much tougher, much higher percentage of people who had been lifetime winners at poker who considered themselves professionals. And in the, newer, tougher climate, a bunch of those guys went broke. A bunch of those guys ended up being the new fish in the much tougher games.
I now think of it as there's this army of professional players out there. And they're just waiting around for a recreational player to come around and play. And it didn't used to be that way.
Do you think being a professional online poker player actually adds anything to the world?
Not really.
I think every poker player that's been doing this for a decent amount of time always goes through that phase, the whole I don't bring anything to society type of angle. I think with the nature of the game being gambling and taking advantage of weaker players who might or might not be able to afford it, obviously brings your values, and you might second guess yourself sometimes on just the nature of your job.
I mean, I know a lot of poker players. They're good people. I don't want to call them selfish, but you're not really helping anybody aside from yourself, and I consider that for myself as well.
I mean, I spend all of this time pursuing wealth as a poker player, trying to make money to buy nice things, to presumably be happier.
That's everyone's dream, is just to be happy and fulfilled and content. But then I also question, is there something more than that's kind of selfish? Are you obligated to give more to humanity, to mankind, write a great novel, or write something that's going to change how people think and last? And obviously that's not something you're ever going to achieve in gambling.
Those are things stuff like writing more or playing music. Those are things that are more like hobbies right now. It's kind of hard to force any of those things into a profitable scheme while simultaneously playing poker, because it's really hard to be devoted to a lot of things at once.
I was born in Hue, Vietnam, which is, the average person probably makes $2-3 a day. And the poverty there is just insane. I don't think most Americans can even imagine what the lifestyle is like. And I still have a lot of family there. My aunt's trying to sponsor them to come to America. And, when they get here, they're not going to have any money. And they're going to have a really rough time. And I just want to be that family member that can help them out. So that would make me really happy if I could do that.
Like, I paid for my sister to go to college with the money I made, just because it'd be so much money to her, you know. I know how hard and annoying it is to work like 40 hours a week, like at like, you know, a nothing job, like as a secretary while you're still in school, and how little you get out of that. So it's not very much money to me, and it helps her out a lot.
At least my dad tells me that he's really thankful that me and Hacker are, you know, at the point where we are in poker, where he doesn't have to worry about stuff like putting my little brother through college, my little sister through college. So, yeah, I think he's definitely helped, and I'm glad about that.
I'm very optimistic about the legal future of online poker. I think that it doesn't really hurt anybody, and there are a lot of people who really want to see it legalized.
I personally think that poker will continue to thrive over the next, 10 years, 10 years even, and it'll still be a profitable way to make money, more so than most other jobs I could get, I think.
Survival of the fittest, I remember. So people just keep getting better. The better ones survive, and then eventually the game will be like so close to being solved that in order to be a good player, you have to be playing almost perfect, and then profit will eventually like drop for everyone to a point where it's not worth playing anymore.
If you suddenly stop being profitable and you want to go do something else, you're definitely going to have a tough pill to swallow when you realize that there's no way you're going to be able to make more than $50,000 a year in basically any job within the first 3 years you're working in it. And if you're used to just kind of making, $200,000 plus a year with working with no boss, that's going to be very, very difficult to handle.
What have you been doing for the past 8 years except being a degenerate? That's what they're going to be thinking in their minds. And it's going to be hard to try and make a good impression in 15 to 20 minutes when I'm interviewing for a job. And, it takes a while for people to understand. I mean, who knows? Hopefully I won't be needing to get a job anytime soon.
Like, I guess the whole objective is never to have to deal with that situation. If you really care about the money in that spot, I mean, it's very likely that I end up working in a position where I'm making, 10% of what I'm making now. But I think if I did choose that path, I would be quite happy in it, and I would be choosing it because I actually liked what I was doing as opposed to the money that would provide.
The economy now is kind of a factor also, but so once that improves, there'll be probably more money coming into the online sites from people who are going to lose it, and the circle will continue. I think I don't have a very grim view for the outlook of poker that some people have.
I felt like if poker ended, we were lucky to have it anyways. I didn't expect to have $1 million by the time I was 21. So who am I to complain? A lot of other people let the opportunity pass them by. Like, I can't, even if it went away today, I can't complain. You know what I mean? Like, I still made more money off of it than almost any 99% of my peers. So who am I to complain? I can't say anything.